After Florida State quarterback Tommy Castellanos tore up Alabama, how much better is he going to get?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're going to be talking about the defense and the offensive line, how they stepped up against Bama, and how that's going to be transcended to the future based on the press conferences for Tony White, the defensive coordinator for the Florida State Seminoles, and Herb Hand, the offensive line coach. Both of them basically, in a nutshell, want more. This is a great, not a good, a great sign for Florida State football. That is going to be at the end of the show. In the middle, we're going to be talking about the defense. Blake Nicholson, the Desir twins. We're going to be talking about Daryl Jackson, Daniel Lyons, Earl Little. All these guys were making plays near the line of scrimmage. Got the stats to back it up. And to start the show, we're going to define Tommy Castellanos, what he did against Alabama, and why the media is not giving him enough credit for throwing the football the way he does, and also why he's probably going to ascend higher. And that's right now I'm going to give my take on it. First things first, he only threw 14 passes against Bama, and a couple were throwaways, which were honestly the best plays that you can make as a quarterback. I know fans don't necessarily like hearing that. The best pass is the one that hits the crossbar, the back of the end zone because he throws it out, or hits the brick wall of the side of the stadium. There's nothing there. Swallow your pride. Take the zero, in other words, incomplete. Go back to the line of scrimmage. It's not a turnover. It's not a sack. It's not a loss. There was nothing bad about the play. You didn't get your receiver killed. Throw it away. Tommy did great. And he also hit the money balls when they were available. He was really good. Listen to this stat line. Passes that were between 10 and 19 yards. They're the worst in terms of statistics because there's so much risk. More linebackers, more second-level defenders. Hardest pass in football. It's not debatable. From 10 to 19 yards, he was 2 out of 4, but he had a drop. Should be 3 out of 4. And he also had 78 yards. 19 and a half yards per attempt. That is about as elite as it's going to get. He's supposed to be just a runner. I told people when he gets hot, he's pretty good. He's been inconsistent from his high school to early parts of his college career. But if he ever took that step, look out. Well, he took that step against Alabama. Give props to Tommy Castellanos, and I'm talking about the national media. And no, not just his ability to be an all-around quarterback because he could run and focus on that. Passing the football. He was really good. Again, I know he only took the opportunity to throw 14. He had 21 dropbacks, so a third of the time he took off, and that's fine. He's obviously electric. 18 carries for 80 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. And oh, by the way, incredible stat here, 4.06 yards per carry after contact. That is insane. So he's obviously a tremendous athlete, and I personally think that he would compete for a Florida State starting running back job and would probably win it if that's the position he wanted to play. He's that good an athlete. But do not, for 1 second, discount what he did against Alabama as a passer. And now let's talk about the future with that. Teams have seen Mekhi Danzy, who I talked about extensively on the Tuesday show for Locked On Seminoles. We also had Jalen Lucas with the long run after the catch on the great pass, second-level pass that Tommy threw. We also have Landon Thomas, who barely played against Alabama. He's going to be healthier, playing more and more and more. We also have Randy Pittman, who was really good, especially blocking. For those of you who did not see the hit and the launch, go check it out. Go search it on X or on Insta. It's probably on all of them. He literally decleated and launched a defensive player for Alabama. You have guys like that helping you to keep you protected. It's a little easier to throw the ball and for them to catch the ball as well. But the wide receivers didn't even have to do a ton. Danzy, Deuce, Squirrel, they all had their different plays because Tommy was in control, getting them in the right play, checking into runs. He could have threw it more. It's an RPO offense. He could have threw it a lot more. He could have thrown it 2 times or even more than that in an RPO offense. Unselfish. Perhaps that's something I should be talking about as well. And that's also why I think this offense I'm just talking 100% about passing here from this point forward about Tommy. As a passing offense, the ceiling is a million miles above where it's already been so far. He only had, 152 yards passing, 10.9 yards per attempt, which is elite by any standard. But there's no reason he can't have a 300-yard day if that's the direction they want to go. I'm not sure they'll go that route. But again, like Wayne McCoy didn't even play. They really didn't get the ball to like B.J. Gibson or some of the other young players that much yet. They're just barely scratching the surface. And the pass protection, as we talked about, and I'll talk about again later in the show, has improved. There's not one metric or the eye test that should lead anybody that's reasonable to think that the passing game isn't going to continue to get better. Am I surprised by it? Wholeheartedly. But am I happy about it? Absolutely. Florida State was not expected to have a consistent passing game this year. I knew they were going to hit shots and take shots because that's what Gus has always done. That's never been a surprise. But for it to be this efficient in game 1 against a secondary that has potentially 3-4 guys minimum that'll at least end up in an NFL training camp, that I did not see. So what do you think he's going to be able to do? And no offense to the following teams, but Virginia, Virginia Tech, NC State, teams that got some talent, but they don't have as much as Bama does. What do I think he's going to do to them? Florida State's passing game is probably the most slept on aspect of this football team. It's exciting, it's surprising, and it's also going to help Florida State in something else that's very important, the win column. Teams are going to creep up their linebackers, their safeties, even their corners and their nickels. Take more chances with corner blitzes, safety blitzes, stunt. They're going to have to. Florida State ran for 230 against Bama. What are they going to do against most, quote-unquote, normal defensive personnel units? Most teams don't have players that look like Bama's players. They don't. Florida State still took it to them, so they're going to creep up. Florida State needs to be able to throw the ball deep a lot more moving forward. They only threw the ball deep a few times. If they take 5, 6, 7, 8 shots in a game, it wouldn't surprise me moving forward. I'm talking about like the ball goes 25, 30 yards in the air or more before it makes contact with an offensive or defensive player. Because teams are going to kind of be forced to put 7 in the box. That's my opinion. The teams that play shell defense moving forward, they're just going to get annihilated up front. Florida State's got too many good running backs. And, of course, Tommy, again, he's electric. So the passing game has a chance, again, million miles. So I say one more time, national media needs to respect Tommy more, specifically as a passer. He earned it. Let's hear you talk about that specifically moving forward in the next couple of weeks. I get it. They don't play great opponents. Let's see how he does against Virginia. There's still, he can come back down to earth. But as long as he can take care of the football the way he did against Bama, his arm talent is tremendous. Let's see what he does there, because I think they could be really, really good. And quite honestly, it's just fun to cover it that way because teams are they're guessing on whether or not Florida State's running or passing, and that's how you can put up some big numbers because they scored 31 on Bama. What are they going to do against teams without as much talent? Florida State could score in the 40s and 50s a few times this year. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Florida State's ability to make big plays, but we're going to switch to the defensive side of the ball. And we're also going to talk about some young players, some guys I didn't necessarily think we were going to talk about as much. That is next on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more awards in 2025 up until August than anybody else. And just like athletes focus on every detail, Mazda does much the same. Metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. So It's the small details that make the big plays in football. And just like that, there's more than to every player. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We truly appreciate you stop in, like, and subscribe. And we'd also like to hear more from you. Locked On wants to know what you think of this podcast and across the board, whether it's Locked On ACC, Locked On College Football, my other show, Locked On the Portal. We want to know what you think. Just go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who takes it will be entered in for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks again for helping us out. Now let's talk about the Noles defense. Florida State, how would I grade this? I would say B+, A-. I mean, it wasn't perfect. The first drive of the game was certainly scary, but overall, I want you to think about that. Not just blurt it out. Just think for a second. Which part of Florida State's defense against Alabama was the most surprising to you? Like not just, the linebacker, something very, very specific. I want you to think about it for a second. Comment down below. What do you think was the most surprising part of the Noles D? For me, it was one word. And it's something Tony White talked about, and I'll go into more detail in the final segment of the show. Physicality. Here's an example, and I'll put it up on the screen momentarily, but Earl Little was making tackles near the line of scrimmage. He's a defensive back. They were playing downhill. They were playing aggressive. They were daring Bama to take shots, and they did a good enough job at the line of scrimmage, not just trenches. I'm talking about when they played any kind of bump or any way they tried to, quote unquote, redirect receivers. They won the battle more often than not. They kept Bama's receivers in check beyond Bernard. Bernard went off. He had a really good day, but he was it. And they didn't hit any 70, 80-yard plays. Florida State did a nice job. Finally with this, and this is the part that's really obvious, Florida State just tackled well. Last year, I screamed into this computer. I screamed into this microphone. I screamed it when I was watching the games. Tackle somebody. Physicality, playing your assignment, redirecting receivers, making plays near the line, and just tackling guys. Fundamentally, Florida State has improved across the board. And that is a lot of fun for me to talk about. So without further ado, I do want to put up some stats here because Florida State, quite honestly, they shined in a way that I didn't necessarily think they would. Here are a few examples. Blake Nicholson's a guy that I enjoy talking about. He had 3 stops, which means a play that was very unsuccessful for the offense, and his average depth of tackle was 2 yards from the line of scrimmage. Really good. Mandrell Desir, true freshman. Him and his brother played well too. 1.7 yards from the line of scrimmage. He had 3 stops as well. Big Darrell. We knew he was going to get double teamed, and I didn't even really know if he'd record more than like a tackle. But he was around the ball quite a bit considering everything, and he made average 2 yards from the line of scrimmage for his depth of tackle. Still pretty darn good. He had a stop too. I think this is a sign. Linebackers and D linemen consistently making plays at the line of scrimmage. If I went back and looked, and no, I won't because I know it was really bad. And compared to last year against quality competition, instead of like 2 and 1, it'd be 4 and 5 too often. It was 2nd down and 5 all day for teams. Florida State had too many run gap fits that were wrong, etc. This group was better. And as I look at this sheet, for those of you on YouTube, and again, I'll read off a few of these for those of you listening. Florida State had 17 players at 60 or above for Pro Football Focus, which means slightly below average to above, and they grade pretty hard on some of the defense, like some other teams I looked at too. I thought they were pretty harsh. But they also have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They had 6 guys over a 7. Nicholson at 78.4 run defense. Everything starts with run defense. Because if it's 2nd down and 4, like any idiot could throw little flat passes and play action to wide open receivers. Quarterback Tyson, he's not great at Alabama, but he's pretty accurate. Florida State made it hard on him because he was in a lot of really rough spots, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 10. Those are not a good time. And Florida State's defensive front did enough. They weren't unbelievable in the pass rush, but they did enough. And on top of that, like Daniel Lyons, you take this for what it's worth, Pro Football Focus had him with 10 pressures. That's probably a little lenient, but still a 300-pound defensive man coming at you like that, yeah, that's going to make Ty Simpson uncomfortable. They really did a nice job of getting after it. Kind of looking at the list, like Jerry Wilson was not picked on very much. They stayed away from him, but he's even on this list too. Justin Cryer, Jason Jenkins, Jabril Rawls, Mandrell Desir, Deontay McCray, Earl Little Jr., Blake Nicholson. Everybody was making plays near the line of scrimmage. It's just, even Jerry Wilson, he's a corner, 6 yards from the line of scrimmage. That's really, really good. So I'm really happy with what I saw from Florida State. And I was just surprised that it was so consistent and so deep, because most of the time when you think about college football and playing defense, you're not going to have guys making that many plays close to the line, not against a quality opponent. So kind of like I said with Tommy, what's the next step? It's a little more difficult with a defense because you're talking about a unit, not a player. But I'll just answer it in this, and please comment down below. The next step is just flat out more tackles for loss and sacks, finishing a few more plays. And give Ty Simpson his credit. He's an experienced quarterback. He didn't call a bunch of dumb plays. He didn't make a ton of mistakes on RPOs, whether he should pull it, whether he should keep it, throw it, etc. But especially against teams that you should just maim, and by the way, the next 2 opponents for Florida State should get whacked, you have to finalize. Then when you play Virginia, and especially when the Miami Hurricanes come to town, you need to whack them. You cannot let them off the hook. Carson Beck was really good against Notre Dame the other night at taking what the defense gave him. If you don't get in his face, and Notre Dame did a terrible job of pass rushing against him, if you don't get in his face, he will pick you apart. He hit 12 passes in a row. He's very accurate. So all these games to me, and I know this isn't what Norvell and everybody else will say, but I'm in the media. I can say this. All these games until they play Miami are practice. I know coaches hate hearing that, but it's not my job to motivate your players. That's your job. They are practice. If you don't beat these next 2 opponents in Virginia, then all this was for naught anyway. They have to be able to consistently start getting tackles for loss and sacks against lesser opponents before they do it against Miami, because Miami's offensive line is legit. They have to be able to do that. It's probably better than Alabama's by a substantial margin based on how Florida State beat up on Bama, and they ran for 86, 87 yards? So Florida State has a chance here to really get it going, rotate a lot of young guys. This is a chance to prove that you're not going to take a major step back after all if you want to go to a major bowl. If you want to contend for the ACC, the defense, making plays in the backfield, whether it's a sack or tackles for loss, finishing a few more plays. They let Ty Simpson off the hook a few times, just being real. They let a few running backs off the hook a few times. They could have got them dropped at the line instead of getting a 2 or 3 yard gain. Finishing plays. I know these are the little things, but as I'll talk about here in just a minute, that's the difference. And Tony White, he said, basically in a nutshell, I'm summarizing, he wants more, and that's what he was talking about. So we're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles, because really there's no reason to believe they can't. This was just the first game under a new scheme, so there's a lot left on the bone. You can go back, nibble some more. Florida State has a chance to take it up another notch. We're also going to talk about the offensive line because, to be honest, they played good, and Herb Hand acknowledged that, but they're not quite where they need to be yet. They're getting better, but they're not quite there. So we're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you want to use it on player props, over-unders, halftime scores, or anything else, all that money can be used for whatever you want on FanDuel. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app and visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And this show is also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you could end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you don't have it put together and organizing on finances, it can cause you problems. Monarch is there for you to help with this. It even does the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, and everything that you need on your spending right there in one place. You can figure out where all your money is and how you could spend it better and save better for the long term from your 401ks and everything else from your past jobs. And you can do it with your partner whenever you want with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Tony White and Herb Hand were pretty much steadfast. They wanted to give credit to what they have done against Alabama, but it was pretty obvious watching back-to-back press conferences today that there was a unified front. I mean, they'll probably deny that, but the tone was almost identical. Very, very little praise, despite beating Alabama and being pretty much as close to monotone as possible. AKA, that is coaching 101 for Coach Speak. Don't give them praise. Don't make them feel good about themselves. Make them believe they need to do a million things more. How much it works, I don't know, but almost all coaching staffs do it. But it's still true to a certain degree, and I kind of touched on that at the end of the last segment. Florida State's defense held Bama to 17, and it could have held them to like 10, 14, somewhere in there, because they let a few plays get away, and they didn't finalize on enough plays. You're not going to win every battle. I get that. A few more plays in the backfield were certainly there, and a few more plays at the line of scrimmage, at the very least, were also available. But the one that was probably the most frustrating, and James Williams can probably talk to this more than anybody on the planet, what he missed, 4 sacks, 5 sacks, got none. He was close numerous times and just didn't get it. He didn't play well in the first quarter, but then he really got better as the game went on. They got to finalize on the quarterback sacks. And I'm just using one example. And they also have to finalize on a few more passes to get their hands on them in the secondary. I want to bring up one thing that bothered me. Why was it that Bernard was just wide open multiple times down the field? Not open, wide open. Those are the kinds of things too. Because if that's the case, a really good pass rush can be mitigated. Somebody busted a couple times on one of the better receivers in college football. He's not as explosive as Ryan Williams, but he's still pretty fast and he's got great hands. Florida State let him off the hook and their offense a few times. If it wasn't for him, Florida State would have held them to 7 points. Like, he was the only reason they scored after that first drive. So they got to figure out some little things there. Now let's talk about the offensive line for a second. I know Herb Hand a little bit, and what you see at the press conference, he's one of the extremely few guys in general. When he says something about a player, that's what he thinks. He does not care. He doesn't care about your feelings. He is as non-politically correct as it's going to get. It's A to B. Have a private conversation with him, press conference, or anywhere in between. Herb's usually kind of that guy. But today, he was just kind of ho-hum when I watched the press conference. It was a little more down like than normal. And this is after they beat Bama. So again, I think there's a unified front there. I get it. But I obviously also know that he's a guy that kind of just lets it ride. He's always been that way. Whenever I've had a conversation with him or I've talked to other people, Herb is that guy. And he didn't sound even remotely satisfied. Keep in mind, they ran for 230, and for the most part, Tommy really didn't get pressured that much with basic fronts. Against Alabama, that's commendable. He made it pretty obvious there's another bar to go with the starters and everybody else, whether Rizzi's in the lineup, whoever, Richie, whatever. He's not remotely satisfied. For one, that's refreshing. It's totally refreshing, especially after the muck that we were dumped into last year and watching Florida State's attempt at blocking in any way, shape, or form. keyword attempt. They really did a great job of being a balanced unit despite this. This is incredible. What Florida State start? 9 transfers out of 11 on offense? That's usually a disaster. Florida State made it work. Give Herb Hand credit. 4 of the 5 transfers were this year as well. Richie Leonard is a guy that came into the lineup last year, played a little bit, and then redshirted. It's unbelievable how much better Florida State played as an offensive line unit than I expected, because they didn't, and Herb admitted this, a lot of them didn't practice in spring. And a lot of them were banged up at different times, etc. They just didn't have much continuity. For them to show that in one game against Alabama, kind of like I said with Tommy, kind of like I said with the defense, they still have a ways they can go. Like, there was a lot of grinded out runs on the inside. I think the inside zone play, which is bread and butter for Malzahn, that in particular can go up another level. And Herb didn't necessarily go in it to talk about that, but I'm just using it as an example. I think the offensive line can play quite a bit better. Going back and looking at a little bit of the run game clips and stuff like that. And I know that, you know, James Smith and some of these other guys, they're big dudes to move out of the way. Totally get it. But they missed some opportunities. They could have hit some more big plays. And as Chroma, Cam Davis gets healthy and all that, they've got guys. I know Rodell's out for a little bit. For those you don't know, he's going to miss some time. There's no definite timetable, but he's out for a while. But they still got plenty of guys. Jalen Lucas, obviously Tommy's going to run. That's fact. They're not shy of physical skill players at running back and receiver. They're going to figure it out. The offensive line just takes one small more step up. They can push 300 yards against quality opponents on the ground. You're not going to lose many games. Very few. When you run the ball like that. So it's kind of exciting to think that Florida State went from pretty much the worst rushing offense in college football to top 20 in one offseason. It's miraculous, and it's commendable. So hats off to everybody that's gotten under this far, and also to those who are still working hard to take it even further. A couple of notches preferably, but let's see what they do against these next 2 opponents. It's something to watch very specifically. They're inferior opponents. It's not debatable. Does Florida State consistently show elite effort, even when they start burying them because they just hit great plays on the outside, the screen goes 80 yards, blah, blah, blah. When the scoreboard looks like a ping pong table, the ball going back and forth, 2 champions going at each other, Florida State says, lighten it up. Does the offensive line grind the exact same way in the third and fourth quarters like they did in the first or 2 drives? How focused are you? That'll tell me something about what's going to happen when they play Virginia, Miami, and on and on and on. It's going to be interesting. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. If you have not already, please become an everydayer. Truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your latest Noles information. It's a lot of fun to be here, especially after beating Alabama. Like and subscribe. And if you're on Apple, make sure you hit that automatic download. We will see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.